Welcome to Scoop World Order. Happy 4th of July to America. I hope you guys all got your gas and sheets for 1776. We're having a big day today. A lot of fireworks going off for Ohio State football. Big time recruits. We thought, Nevadabuck and I thought it would be fun to explore the possibility. Is this 2024 class potentially the best in Ohio State history? If they finish strong, it easily could be. If you look at the rankings, we're actually going to compare it to the class that Nevada and I agree is the best class in school history. Through the rankings, the 01 Scout era, Rivals.com era. Obviously, you can go back into the 60s, the super sophomores, and those types of classes. But we wanted to go where you could compare star rankings and the like. So we're going to compare the vaunted 2002 class, which won a national championship their freshman year. Most of those guys redshirted. Obviously, guys like Maurice Claret did not, and they were workhorses that year. To this 24 class, and I think you guys are going to be shocked at the quality of class. And also, it's interesting how many of the kids from that '02 class were from the state of Ohio, and how different it is now. So with that being said, as always, we appreciate you guys tuning in as you guys are cooking your burgers and hot dogs and having hopefully a cold beer. Remember, if you shoot those fireworks off, make sure you throw them and run away. I appreciate you guys all being on here. As always, if you enjoy this content, please leave us a like. Click subscribe and also click that alert bell. That alert bell is huge because it lets you guys know when we are going live with content. We're going to take your questions during this. Going on a little trip down memory lane. It's going to be a fun one. I'm excited about this episode. Gonna bring in my good friend Nevada. You've been knowing this for a long time. '02. I'm not sure how much. I'm sure you were following recruiting heavily back then. Were you in the message board game back then, or were you just calling the Bill Greene hotline and getting the updates?
No, I was just getting into it, and I think it was just about the time I was getting started. It's about 20 years ago. But before I get into that, I just wanted to say happy, 4th of July to everybody. This is like probably my favorite holiday. I'm a big history buff, as you know, the big war buff, as you know, and I think for a lot of people they read about the 4th of July and it's just like a holiday, or it's Independence Day. Yeah, it's Independence or the fireworks, whatever. But like the idea that we gained independence from like the only world superpower at the time in terms of Great Britain, and they were able to beat them. I mean, when you really read what they went through and what George Washington did in terms of training in the militia, and underarmed, barely paid militia against the greatest fighting force in the world, the British Army, it's incredible. I mean, it's absolutely nothing short of incredible, and I just think everybody should take a moment on today and really reflect. And like I said, if you haven't been able to read the books about, the great Revolutionary War battles and things like that, really take time doing it, because it's pretty stunning when you think about it. So that's what I wanted to start with. Happy 4th of July to everybody, and now we can get into that great 2002 class.
Yeah, some really, really tough dudes back in the day. Thank you for fighting for the independence, because America's the best. And again, you think about it back then when you didn't have technology, you didn't have your new world. I mean, it is stunning what they were able to pull off. What do you remember as that '02 class started to come together and wrap up down the stretch, capped by Troy Smith, the last guy they offered, ends up winning the Heisman. What do you remember about that class?
Well, I mean, for me, it was the Justin Zwick class. Justin Zwick, been hearing about him since he was a freshman. 10,000 yards passing in high school, in Ohio high school at the time, which was crazy numbers. Absolutely crazy. And he was the chosen one, going to lead this class. And it seemed like they developed some momentum early. They went out and got just about, they literally just cleaned house in Ohio. I'd like to go through who they missed in Ohio that year, because there wasn't many that they missed in the state of Ohio. And then they went out and got their some big out of state targets as well, some highly regarded, some less regarded, but they just got production up and down the. It's funny when you look at, we'll go through this, but you look at the 5 stars, the 4 stars, and 3 stars, and by far the least productive group of the bunch was the 5 stars, and
Yeah.
which is really not the way it goes. And secondly, that class was almost exclusively from the state of Ohio, which is another
Uh,
really interesting factoid about that. That in 20 years, that recruiting could change that much. That you've got a class like that that's almost exclusively Ohio kids, and where Ohio football is now, and we can discuss if that's a temporary blip. Are there ways to turn it around? What things can they do to make it better? But with all the issues, this class is going to be better, and it's amazing that we're talking about it in the same breath. But let's get into that 2002 class and take a trip down memory lane, look at that, and then we can compare it to where we are today and where we're going.
all right, so we're gonna pull up. These are the old Scout.com rankings. Scout was bought by 247. Uh, right at the top, man. I remember Mike Deandrea. I remember it was us in Nebraska because for me, these guys are 1 year older than me. So I was in the '03 class. These guys are the '02 class. So I knew all these guys. They were we were in high school. We were at camps together. Mike Deandrea was like that next Katzenmoyer capstone, like start as a freshman, kind of all the superlatives you throw out about like what could a Brian Urlacher-ish really it was Katzenmoyer. Katzenmoyer was the guy back then. Urlacher was a couple years in the league, but Katzenmoyer was the comp for Mike Deandrea. Really nice kid. Never made it at Ohio State. Had a bunch of injuries, a lot of knee injuries. But it was a great teammate, a guy that I really rooted for. I remember he tried to come back in '06. I believe he got a medical, and he just couldn't literally do anything because his knee was so bad. What do you remember about Mike Deandrea's recruitment? Because he was a guy that when we got him, it was like pop the champagne, here comes the big cat. He was that kind of player.
I just remember, and again, it's very possible that my memory could be wrong on this, but I remember him kind of committing relatively late in the process. He was one of the
Mhm.
last guys to come into the class, and there was a lot of talk about how his personal trainer or somebody that was training him was from Nebraska, and how that might be a thing for him. But yeah, I remember when that broke. It was kind of you know, there were like 4 great linebackers from the state of Ohio that year, and Kudla and Carpenter and AJ Hawk and Deandrea. But Deandrea was definitely the cherry, on top of the sundae, and the guy that you really wanted to have. And given how much hype a guy like Chris Spielman had come in with, or Andy Katzenmoyer had come in with, you expected to have similar results. And sadly, as you said, injuries just kept him from getting there. But like great teammate and great get for Ohio State.
Yeah. Again, Michael's a great guy. I got to know him. Our first contact drove it at Hewton Holler. I lined up across from him. So I was like, oh my God, I'm going as Mike Deandrea. Again, like when you're a kid and you read this stuff, and again, this is back before YouTube, this is back before film. I had no idea what the kid was, and I actually pancaked him, which I swear to God, like Jim Bowman was like, that was a hell of a block. And I was like, I couldn't even believe I did it. I mean, honestly, because I was freshman, 285, first day in pads. We do a big, it's like Oklahoma drill basically. And I was going against Mike Deandrea, who was 245 and jacked. And I was shocked. Like, it honestly, it was kind of kind of a sign of things to come. Derek Morris, the 5-star tackle, because you can only win if you have 5-star tackles. Another guy, ultra heralded, North Carolina. I know a lot of greasy stuff went on with Derek Morris. Never made an impact here. Obviously, he was gone pretty much immediately. Went to NC State. I think he might have started for a year there. I don't think he got drafted, and then I think he was a couple practice squads and out, but never made any impact. It was listed here as 6'6", 350, which is really heavy. And again, I don't know how accurate these weights are because these are the things were like the Stone Age back in '01, '02 versus now. What do you remember about Derek Morris? I remember like next Orlando Pace, next Corey Stringer, and he never did anything like anywhere. But what do you remember about Derek Morris?
Wow, I just remember that Jim Bowman did a very ham-handed attempt to get him money, and that was probably the worst. One of the worst NCAA infractions that we've ever had was that. I'm still not sure why that hasn't gotten more run, but yeah, a guy that you absolutely had to have in the class. We got to have Derek Morris. And then when we got him, it was just like, oh my god, we got him, we beat him, and then he turned out to be nothing. But it was
Uh,
fun. Those few days of excitement were exciting for sure.
yeah, I couldn't imagine what like a message board would have been like back then when you get Deandrea, Morris. Justin Zwick was the guy that was the linchpin of the class. He was the lead, the class leader. Usually if the quarterback commits early, he becomes the de facto leader of the class. Um, Obviously Justin, got beat out by Troy Smith. Troy Smith wins the Heisman. What do you remember about Zwick's recruitment, commitment? I mean, were you surprised at how it went down with his career at all? Because again, like people, they were projecting that he would start over Craig Krenzel as a freshman. Like he was like that type of phenom. But were you surprised at how his career went down?
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, he was supposed to be the next great one, and as you said, technology's changed just so much. Now you've got instantaneous access to, you know, game film, and you can watch live games. You can see these kids, but back then they were just kind of like words on a paper. You know what I'm saying? And unless you
Yeah.
had eyes on them and were able to go out there and actually watch the games, you didn't know. So Justin Zwick was just a guy that you read about in Buckeye Sports Bulletin or something like that, and as you said, committed early, de facto leader of the class, and really kind of set the tone. I mean, I don't think you have the great 2002 class without that Justin Zwick early commitment. So I think these things have a tendency to avalanche sometimes, and so for that I do give him credit because he was the leader, and it was an amazing class.
Yeah. Obviously, by far the best 5 star. It's weird because we've got 4 5 stars. None of them really made any impact at Ohio State except for one guy, the guy that we won the national championship with. I mean, Maurice Claret, I mean, there's not a lot you can say about Maurice. Obviously, uh, star-studded freshman year, dazzling freshman year, wins the national title, leads, freshman rushing record until Trey Henderson broke it. What do you remember about Maurice? Because Reese was that dude. I mean, he was a guy that weight room. I mean, I remember I walked in the weight room, they had all the records up, and Reese squatted like 800 pounds. I mean, he was the guy, and he was, he's a little off the chain at times, obviously, and and his career didn't materialize the way that any of us would have projected. But what do you remember about Maurice's, not just his commitment, but his impact on Ohio State as they ran through the O2 schedule and beat the Miami Hurricanes?
Well, I think I mean, like, we could spend 7 podcasts talking about Maurice, but an underrated thing about Maurice was I think he was one of the first guys that I can remember that did the early enrollee thing, and again, that wasn't really a thing back then. And when he came in, we were like, "What is he doing?" He's like, he's leaving high school, he's coming, and when he came, he wasn't coming to mess around. He was coming to immediately, take a position, take a job, lead the team, and that's not a typical role for freshmen. Freshmen usually just shut up and let the upperclassmen do. But I remember early on, he called out the upperclassmen, and just everything about him kind of screamed different. And like I said, did a lot of great things on the field, off the field, disaster. Um, seems like he's turned it around. Seems like it's got a better ending, but obviously a key part of that national championship and far-reaching impact on the program for sure.
Yeah, and I remember I went to the spring game, because I was getting recruited, so I went to the O2 spring game, and I think the final score was 6-3. It was the most boring football game I ever watched. And they were using Maurice as like a wing back. They're like throwing him the ball on the flat, and I mean he wasn't like the stand back there power tailback that he was like. He kind of had like a funky role in the spring. I don't know if they were trying to see if he could catch the ball or what it was, but I remember like I was like, God, they're like turning him into like Darren Sproles or something, which was bizarre to me. So we're gonna flip over to the 24 class and evaluate the 5 stars and a couple more potential 5 stars. So at the top of this class, we have JJ Smith. I mean, there's nothing left to be said about JJ. He might be the best player in the country, number one receiver in the country. 247 has him as number 2 overall national, I'm sure behind Dylan Raiola. So we got him. We got Justin Scott yesterday. Again, people that are sad about Marquise Lightfoot, I'm like, guys, we got Justin Scott. I don't really care about Marquise Lightfoot anymore because Justin Scott is 5 star, superstar defensive tackle. Could easily be the number 1 defensive tackle in the country. Top 15 player in the country. Mylan Graham is a guy we don't talk about enough on the show. Superstar receiver, 4.3 speed. Your boy Aaron Noland. And the funny thing is we've got four at the top, but Nevada, we could add two more pretty easily that are both defensive ends, which is a high impact position. What are your thoughts on the 5 stars of the 24 class?
Well, I mean, obviously, look, they all look great now on paper. So, it's just like Derek Morris did, and just like Justin Zwick did. Now, having said that, I think that the ratings have certainly been refined. There's certainly a higher hit rate on 5 star kids than there are on 3 star kids. So, certainly every reason to be excited. And as you mentioned, we're not close to done. I mean, we're obviously right there with Houston, Stewart, Bolden. Um, yeah, I mean, this class could have 8 5 star players in it, which is just absolutely insane and really a testimony to what a great job the recruiting group has done this year, because having to navigate this, having to navigate NIL, having to navigate all the challenges of the transfer portal. Um, very, very difficult to do. And so Ohio State's making it look easy, but let me assure you, it's not easy. Um, and they deserve all the credit in the world for what they're doing, because they're putting together an epic class. And as I said, they're not close to being done.
Yeah, and I think like in modern recruiting, I think it's just more for Ohio State. I think it's more difficult because if you look at these 5 stars, none of them are from the state of Ohio. And two, I just think with digital film, with modern technology, with the amount of exposure these kids get at the rivals camps, the Elite 11 camp, like there's a billion opportunities where you're evaluated with all the pressure on and all eyeballs on you and cameras and it's all on YouTube. Like, so I mean, these evals are generally, I feel, a lot stronger than they were in '02 when it was two guys going to a camp and just watching a couple high school games and say, okay, he's a 5 star, he's a 4 star. I just think that now it's so easy to get picked apart just because there's so many camps. Army All American rivals, Ohio State team camps. So I feel like these rankings obviously are more accurate just because there's so much more opportunities to see the kids. I mean, if you just give just YouTube and Huddle digital film alone, it makes it a lot easier to see these kids. So we're gonna switch over to the 4 stars. Nevada, start with Doug. We had Doug Dadish, another tackle from Howland. Nice career at Ohio State. Teammate of mine, was captain in '06, draft pick. Good player. Quinn Pitcock is a kid that doesn't get enough run. Was a kid that would have been a $50 million defensive tackle if he didn't have his video game addiction. And he quit. He basically quit the NFL. Then tried to get back into it. But his rookie year, he was really good. And I remember I was watching film with Olin Kreutz in '08. We were getting ready to open with the Colts. So I was playing for the Bears. And we were watching Quinn, and he's unbelievable. And Olin Kreutz is a Hall of Famer, and Olin Kreutz doesn't give anybody a compliment. So when he says a guy is unbelievable, like he's unbelievable. And then Quinn just, he left camp, and he had his addiction problem, so he tried to come back. Mike Kudla is a guy who I love to death. Rest in peace. He passed away a couple years ago. Maybe the hardest guy I had to block while I was at Ohio State, which people think is, I mean, he's right next to Will Smith. And I know people think that's crazy because Coods, for whatever reason, didn't get drafted. I think it was because he was a tweener. I mean, he was not 6'4". He was maybe 6'1". It's hilarious that he's listed. That's why these recruiting rankings are hilarious, because he was 6'6'1". He was not 6'4". Through those first couple of guys, Nevada, through Dadish, Quinn Pitcock, Kudla, and we'll throw in Bobby. Obviously, Bobby Carpenter, everyone knows Bobby's a first-round pick. Had a great career at Ohio State, good NFL career. What do you remember about those first couple of guys? Because this is a big cluster of 4 stars here.
Well, just all key contributors, and I'll echo your thing on Quinn Pitcock. I thought he was one of the most underrated players. I thought he was just absolutely fantastic, All-American quality player at Ohio State, just a stalwart there. And as you said, video game addiction, which sounds kind of funny, but not funny at all, and just incredibly debilitating. And like you said, it cost him generational wealth, because he was just an absolutely just fantastic player, really a key guy from on all those great Ohio State teams, the years that he played there, because just the endless motor and very, very difficult to block, and uber productive. And but again, you can say that about all Dadish, came on a little bit later in his career. Kudla, obviously, great player, and Bobby, started it off with that great play on special teams, making that tackle right off the bat, and just never looked back. Was always high impact at Ohio State. So just all tremendous players, and 4 stars, but 5-star production from each one of them.
Yeah, then we'll keep scrolling because, like I said, there's a lot of them. R.J. Coleman, funny story about R.J. He was my host on my official visit. He was a tight end that converted to guard. Never produced, never started a game. Nice guy, but I mean, he obviously he was rated as number 6 tight end in the country. People thought he'd be. I mean, he was in the conversation to be like an Eric Winston. Eric Winston and him were in the same class. Roy Hall, nice career. Nothing special. A lot of people had high hopes for Roy. And he got passed by Teddy and Gonzo and the first rounders. And but he was a good contributor, especially in that 06 year. Nate Sally, one of the greatest human beings I've ever met. One of the kindest. Really started the St. Thomas Aquinas pipeline that fed us the Bosas. Their Trayvon Grimes for the year that he was here. Some really good players. Tim Schaefer's a guy that just never really did anything. He started a couple games in 04 before I beat him out, but never really did anything. This is interesting that I did not know that Troy Smith was a 4-star. Like I knew that Troy, I had assumed he was a 3-star just because he was offered late. His offers aren't very overwhelming. He didn't have the big time, the Oklahomas and the USCs and those types of schools back then. EJ Underwood, off the field issues, super talented, actually bounced around the league for a little bit. And then Stan White's the last one, was a good serviceable fullback, did a lot of dirty work. Nice kid. Dad was a legacy, played for Woody. So good career. What do you remember about that second crop of guys, starting with R.J. Coleman, Roy Hall, obviously Troy Smith?
Well, obviously Roy Hall's most famous for breaking Teddy's ankle on the celebration. So we'll move on from that. Troy Smith, I'm pretty sure Troy Smith was 4-star, but as an athlete, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, because he was back returning kicks for Ohio State his freshman year, and they weren't sure where they were going to play him. Even there was talk about playing him on the other side of the ball. So like you just had no idea with Troy, and he ends up being the Wolverine killer and the most cold-blooded quarterback in Ohio State history. Didn't see that one coming, that's for sure. And Stan White, the last of those 5 great linebackers. So some of you forget Stan White, but obviously that huge block in the 05 game, the comeback game where you guys were down 9 with 7 minutes to go, and the big block to just kind of put the icing on the cake on that one for the touchdown. And I just like I said, just all guys that found a way to contribute. Coleman didn't, but that class didn't have many misses, that's for sure. That's how notable they are, is when you find those guys that weren't key contributors at the college level, because it was a deep class.
Yeah, so we'll switch over to the current class. The 4 stars starts with Bryce West. Obviously, he's right on the verge of being a 5-star. So you could actually have 8 or 9 5-stars if he's the 4th corner, number 1 in the state of Ohio. Again, like there isn't a 5-star in the state of Ohio this year, but he's the closest that we have to one. James Peoples, I think, could easily be a 5-star. He's a superstar running back. He's maybe the best running back in the country. He's a guy. He's an outstanding kid, but you watch his tape, man, and it is freaky good. Ian Moore's our highest rated lineman commit. Has really come on. I love that and I've said this before, his high school coach is Kyle Ralph, who is an Ohio guy, played football at North Carolina, understands how to develop offensive linemen. You watch Ian Moore, when I saw him in camp, it's like he's been coached. He's been, like he's got great technique. So that's a plus that you have an offensive line, a college offensive lineman as your high school head coach, because, he's going to know how to develop a lineman. He's exceptionally strong, big weight room guy, 405 bencher. So again, I really like that kid. Garrett Stover is a kid a lot of people are sleeping on. He's another Ohio kid, 4-star, probably going to be a linebacker. That smaller, faster linebacker. Then you have Jordan Lyle. Again, like this is, there's a lot of 4 stars. Jordan Lyle from Aquinas, another Aquinas kid, Peyton Pierce, Jalen McClain, safety, Max LeBlanc, tight end, the Armstrong twins, both 4 stars, and then finally Demarion Witten are the 2 4 stars. So there's a lot of 4 stars in the middle of this class. Nevada, your thoughts? Again, we've talked a lot about all of these guys basically, but your thoughts on Wes Peoples and the mix of 4 stars in this 24 class?
Well, I think as you pointed out, it's really heavily high end rated. I mean, you can make an argument for at least 2 of those guys being five, and I think they both will end up being 5 stars. But Ian Moore's, a lot of people have him as the top offensive tackle in the country. So you could talk about 2, 3 guys on top of the 4 guys we have on top of the 3 guys that we could get, and this certainly could be a class for the ages. Interesting that as we talk about the contrast between this and in 2002, how 2002 was virtually all Ohio kids, and how this class is the 5 stars aren't coming from Ohio, and we have to make an argument for West slipping into that 5 star spot, but things have changed, but Ohio State's changed with it. I feel like the best kids out of Ohio, and the rankings don't really matter, but I think they'll sort themselves out. But I think when all said and done, I think Ohio State ends up somewhere with 7 or 8 5 stars in this class, and that's unprecedented.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to end up being just one of those just crazy years because, again, the quality of the 4 stars is pretty high. And then we go down to the 3 stars. This is where it gets real interesting in this O2 class. So you start off with Tyler Everett, kid from McKinley. Nice career. Started at corner for us in 05. Started kind of all over the place. Played nickel. Had a pick 6 versus Penn State in 04. Nice player. Again, like he wasn't he bounced around the NFL a little bit when he was done. But then you get into some of these names and you're just like, wow, you can't believe they're 3 stars. Antonio Holmes, I think one of the finest receivers in Ohio State history, absolute monster versus Michigan. Today it'd probably be a 5 star. Today, it would have been, a Heartline pulling a 5 star out of Florida. This kid didn't get offered by any of the Florida schools. Kind of was us in NC State, I believe, for Santonio. And if the Hurricanes offer this guy or the Seminoles or the Gators, then we don't get Santonio. But they all passed on him for guys that weren't anywhere near as good as him. So thank you for whiffing big time. Rob Sims, one of my best friends. He's up in Detroit now. Played 8 years in the league. Drafted by the Seahawks. Was a fantastic guard for us. I think he went 3rd round. Just a great player, great guy. One of my favorite teammates ever. Nick Mangold, obviously, is like a fringe NFL Hall of Fame type guy. Just, one of the finest centers in school history. He's in that conversation with Charles Bentley and a couple other guys. 1st round pick, obviously. Tremendous career at Ohio State, tremendous career with the New York Jets. I think he's in the Jets Ring of Honor, so really a special dude. And then we get to maybe the best player. Well, no, the best player in the entire class, AJ Hawk, 3 star. It's just funny when you look. They rated 23. They had him 21st in the state of Ohio, which is crazy. AJ Hawk, maybe the best teammate I ever had, one of the greatest leaders I've ever been around. Obviously, phenomenal player. In the conversation for best linebacker in school history, in my opinion. Joel Penton, good serviceable role player. TJ Downing, my roll dog, my right guard, great dude, nasty player, tough player. Jay Richardson, a guy that 5-6 years in the NFL, 5th round pick of the Raiders, good player. Started in 06, was really good in 06. And then Mike Roberts, this is funny because you mentioned the enrolling early thing. Mike Roberts actually enrolled early with Maurice Claret, and he was from Toronto, so we always had funny nicknames for him. But he actually enrolled early, which is, again, something I never heard of. Again, to look at that we took a guy, and again, these guys all rated like 670th nationally, because they probably didn't have ratings big enough for all these guys back then. But it is kind of funny where you see where some of these guys are in national rankings. Nevada, what do you remember about some of these guys? That we just mentioned. Obviously, AJ, obviously, Nick Mangold. It's amazing that those guys are 3 stars.
Well, again, I can vividly just remember that their commitments were met with kind of collective yawns. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
because they're 3 stars, and that's what it is. And you're talking about NFL Hall of Famers, Super Bowl MVPs, best
yeah,
linebacker in school history type of things, and
yeah.
they they came from the 3 stars for the class. And I mean, it's absurd when you look at it. It's amazing, uh, to see how much production we got top to bottom on that class. And like I said, recruiting, yeah, we're a little bit more inefficient now. I'd like to think that we're better at it and that stuff like that doesn't happen, but it happens every year. And every year you look at the NFL draft and you see guys from these directional schools or from you know places you've never heard of before that are getting drafted in the NFL draft. So lots of good players out there. Be excited about every commitment. If you don't believe that, just go back and look at the 2002 class and look at the incredible legacy that those guys led. And it came from the bottom. It came from the 3 star for the kids from the muck we that we got. So be excited about every commitment.
Yeah, and the only 3 stars in the current class are Mark Nave and Sam Williams Dixon. So we've talked about those guys enough. Again, those are guys that they're projected low, but hey, they could turn into the next dudes. You never know. A final thing that we're gonna do, just because I was interested to see who was rated ahead of AJ. So this is the O2 class. This is the state of Ohio. The top players in the state of Ohio, 2002. So you got Deandrea right at the top, followed by Justin Zwick was number 2. Maurice was third, and then Deshaun Wynn, blast from the past, who beat. Obviously, he's not going to go the same place as Maurice. This wasn't back. The two running back thing really wasn't as big of a thing as it is now. Like back then, it was you get one running back and that's it. Now it's like a lot of these classes have 2 running backs. Dadish was 5, Pitcock 6. David Abdul, the kicker from Pitt or from Massillon, actually went to Pitt, and that guy had a hose when he was a kicker at Massillon. I mean, he 65-yard type leg. George Cooper. I mean, it's just funny seeing some of these names. Then you got Bobby. You get some of these guys. Troy's actually 9th in the state, which is kind of surprising given where a lot of people thought he was the late 3-star. And I mean, he's actually. And again, they might have revised these rankings when people weren't looking, but it's funny. At 15 is Kyle Ralph. That's Ian Moore's coach in Indiana. So I want to go through memory lane and just kind of see where some of these guys were from. But yeah, there's some. Barry Cofield's a guy we missed on. That was a guy who was a really good player at Northwestern, played about 8 years in the league. But it's just interesting when you look at the rankings and you see right at the top, you've got 3 5-stars in the state of Ohio. And, now we're lucky to have a 5-star every 3 years in Ohio, like 1 5-star. I think the last one we've had was Parrish Johnson. So I think that makes it a lot harder for Ohio State because they got to recruit nationally. Your thoughts on that, Nevada? Because we were talking in pre-show about Pennsylvania, Ohio, just how I feel like the population's moved south. We don't have spring football. What do you make of kind of the degradation of the amount of high end football talent that there is in Ohio, Pennsylvania, even Michigan?
Well, it is. It's a something, and it's just it's profound. And when you look at this 2002 class, it really brings it home. And I mean, we talked about Western Pennsylvania. Western Pennsylvania used to be maybe the place to go to watch high school football, and now it's not a wasteland, but you're just not getting the type of talent that you used to. And I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. It's all the things that you talked about. There's another thing that you've raised a couple of times, but the impact of these prep schools. A lot of the kids will leave.
Mm-hmm.
Carnell Tate will leave and go down and play at IMG or play somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And you're seeing that in all sports. You're seeing that where you've got to kind of go to where the elite talent is, where the prep schools are, and a lot of times that's not at home. And for Ohio, it just makes it even more amazing, given the profound degradation of Ohio's football, that Ohio State is now bordering on having the greatest recruiting class in history, because recruiting in general is a local business. And to, when you got to go out of the state and go out and get your guys, that just makes it doubly and triply hard. And then you throw NIL on that, and it makes it 4 and 5 times as hard. So, we always say on this podcast, we want to be fair. We're going to give you the good. When Ohio State's not doing well in something, or they're messing up, we're going to tell you. We'll be the only podcast that'll tell you, because everybody else is so scared to get on the wrong side of Ohio State that they will not tell you. They absolutely they have to recite the party line. We don't care. We're going to tell you the truth. But Ohio State is kicking booty and doing it the hardest possible way, because the talent in Ohio is not where it used to be. It's not a great year in Ohio. And for Ohio State to be putting together a class like this, absolutely stunning. All the credit in the world goes to the recruiting staff and Ryan Day, and I tip my hat to them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you got to convince these kids to leave home. You got to convince the parents that it's worth the investment to come to Ohio State. And by investment, I mean that means you got to fly to every home game. You can't load up the car and drive. You got to, the road games are further away. If you're down in the ACC, SEC, you can drive. If you're from the South, you can drive to most of the away venues. So there's a cost thing. Obviously NIL is a huge help for Ohio State. I think that, when these kids show up and they get, a nice check and they can defray the cost or pay for their family's travel, then that's one of the things that I don't think people talk about enough, is that, hey, you get a check for, $100,000 and all of a sudden you can fly mom in every single week, or you can get a 2-bedroom apartment. Your parents can stay with you, when they come to home games. And that's something kids are doing now. And it's something that I think is amazing. And I think it's a huge benefit to Ohio State, because, as much as, these kids are going to buy some flashy stuff, whatever, there's also a practical thing where it's like, hey, now I don't have to worry about my mom taking out a second mortgage. Because I've talked to parents of Ohio State players, and it's like, look, they got to go to the Big Ten title game. They got to go to a playoff game. They got to go to a second playoff game. I mean, it's unbelievably expensive if you've got a family of 4. You want to take your mom, dad, grandma, whoever, sister, brother, girlfriend. It gets really expensive. You get 6 tickets to every bowl game. And I mean, each one of those tickets is probably $1,000 in travel for airfare and hotel and food and all that. So, again, getting these kids to understand it's a business decision. It's a 3, 4, 5-year commitment where you're going to go and try to be the best you can so that you can make generational wealth, which a lot of these kids are doing. It's big kudos to Mark Pantoni and to Ryan Day, because again, they don't have the luxury of having the fertile recruiting grounds that Jim Tressel had. This is what it is. Like, you look at the numbers and they're just not there. I think that, the prep schools like IMG, we live in this era now where people are absolutely insane. And they think that, 6-year-olds need to play travel sports year round and fly across the country for baseball and hockey and basketball tournaments. And like, I don't see that. Like, I think that, you need to let kids be kids. And when they get a little older, they can start doing that. But people think the only way they can go pro is if they start playing travel hockey and they fly from Florida to Buffalo. And that's the only team you're ever going to be able to find, is if you fly 5 hours. And I just don't think it's like that. But I do think that if your kid is serious about, some of the football stuff, it's hard when Ohio just will not pass spring football in pads, and Georgia and Florida, they all do it. So that's why some of these kids end up going to IMG, because you get spring football, you get the best coaching, you get great facilities, you get kind of all the perks that you don't get in the state of Ohio. I think Ohio is archaic and behind the times, and it doesn't hurt us, because I think it's more just the population surge in the South hurts us. But, again, Ohio State operates like a borderless entity. It's a national brand, it's a global brand. And I think that, Ryan Day and Mark Pantoni have done a great job of accentuating that to recruits, because, again, it's a cool place to go, and everyone wants to meet Marvin Harrison. And you see all these Ohio State guys, Garrett Wilson wins Rookie of the Year, and Paris Johnson is the number 6 pick at left tackle, and CJ Stroud goes 2 overall. Like, you see every position group is flourishing at Ohio State right now. And it's never been better. So I think that kudos to those guys, man, because they're killing it. We're going to wrap this thing. 4th of July, Nevada. What's on the menu? Are you shooting fireworks off? What are you up to today?
Just going to kind of low key it. I'm going to go play a little golf today and try to get out there and hit the golf ball, get ready, celebrate, get ready for Kingston. We talked about getting kids from out of Ohio, Kingston might be a kid you want to keep an eye on. Out of California, strong visit with Ohio State. Might have moved above USC on the wish list on the depth chart, and could be some good news coming on that sooner than later.
Yeah, I think Kingston's in the boat. I'm excited about him. So he's coming on it looks like the 23rd he's committing. So it's going to be popping about a week before we get Aaron Scott. It looks like he's going to commit to Ohio State on the 30th. So a lot of good news coming this way. And if we get Dylan Stewart and Edric Houston, look out, because this is easily, I think, the best class in Ohio State history, and it's just pulled up by the number of 5-stars. I mean, for star ranking, it's absolutely going to be the best. Just because we don't have the 3-stars. Because 7, 8, 5-stars is going to really, I mean, that'll break every record. And it'll be up there with that A&M class from last year. So it'll be special. So, well, we're going to wrap this. I'm going to let you guys go hit the barbecue, go get the fireworks fired up, go hit the swimming pool, whatever you guys are up to today. I hope you guys have a very safe and fantastic 4th of July. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you guys are the best. Again, if you enjoy this content, please leave us a like. That is a huge help for us. Also, a huge help for us is join our website, BuckeyeScoop.com. Our site is absolutely crazy today. We got big 4th of July thread, a lot of recruiting stuff going on, a lot of team info is coming out. These guys are getting back into the swing. Summer 2 starts up tomorrow. So Mickey Marotti is going to be running the hot dogs out of these kids. And I can't wait to hear about some of the torturous stuff that he's going to be doing to them, because that's when the football teams are made, ladies and gentlemen. It's made in the summer when it's hot on that turf, running cut 300s. It's miserable, but it's what you need to do. You get these guys nice and tough and callous up for a very heavy schedule that is ahead. So, again, if you enjoy this content, please leave us a like. Click subscribe as we race to 20,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. We appreciate you guys so much. And also, if you enjoy our live content, click that little alert bell. Shout out where you're from in the comments. I want to hear it. And I want you to give me your feedback. Who is better? Is this 24 class projected with if we add Dylan Stewart, Edric Houston, KJ Bolden? Does it top that 02 class? It's kind of hard to say day one, but on paper, man, there's a lot of stars. So write that in the comments. I want to hear your opinions and any other classes that you think are comparable to that 02 class. Put them in the comments. So appreciate you guys as always. I hope you guys have a very happy 4th of July. Talk to you guys soon. I will see you guys all on BuckeyeScoop.com. Join up with me and my friends, and we're going to get it cranked up today. So you guys have a good one. Go Bucks.